All right, we're good. Sometimes
I feel like we got to do it again.
there's a button that if I don't hit it, the audio won't record through the camera, and it is a pain in the ass to sync up.
We should just release an episode where it's completely silent.
Just one more good one.
And welcome to the Backseat playlist, episode
6.
6-2-1.
You always introduce it, and I feel like that makes me a bad host. But I always realize, because I'll edit it, and I'll be like, Phoenix always introduces it, and I realize it's right when I'm putting the clicker board thing on the clap.
I'll slow down next time.
I feel that I should introduce one, but today's not that day.
Today's not that day. We should do it for episode 10.
Yeah.
Make it the big 1-0. The big 1-0.
Adam introduces his own podcast.
Whoopie-doopie-doo.
Boom.
Shapadoo. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about drum processing and other stuff that we missed along the way of the last 4 episodes, or whatever.
So kind of just a culmination of everything we've talked about, boiling down finally into the entire drum kit, the processing of each piece, how to put it all together, how to not suck. I wish we could teach you that.
Still haven't figured that one out yet. So
yeah, still working on it.
Yeah, I just figured it would be good because each episode was kind of realized, like we were just talking about, the instrument, the mic, and the room. And then we would, on some episodes, we would like touch on some EQ moves, and then other episodes we really wouldn't. And I was like, we should have gotten into that. So I figured we would just, now that we have our drums imported into our DAW of choice, or your console of choice.
No, they're all imported into my DAW. All of your drum tracks. Remember, we talked about that. We're data mining people.
That's true.
I've got your IP address.
That's good.
That's good. It's a good thing to have.
Yeah, so now that our drums have been recorded, presumably in a more home recording style environment where you're probably not EQing or compressing on the way in, you're saving that for in your software, because most of us have 8 channels with just a gain knob on it. So,
or I love when you get to the point where you've got you still have your 2-channel interface that you started with, but then you bought an 8-channel one. So now you daisy chain them together, and you get 10 channels, and it's just a mess because you're at 8 in on one thing, and you've got 2 over here, and it's a whole tangled mess in your bedroom.
You mean like how some of us have an Apollo twin?
Yeah.
But then the Behringer 8 unit of
For
preamps.
me, it was the Scarlett 2i2, and then I got the Scarlett 8, and I was like, now I'm going to just slam everything together, and it is a mess. Dude, fun story.
I actually don't hate the Behringer preamps that
Dude,
I have.
I love them. I still have a set.
Yeah, and I have the newer, you have the silver ones, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it's like the silver unit.
Yeah, it's the silver
I have
unit,
the red one, which is
after
they officially bought Midas. So
okay, that was after they bought Midas.
Yeah, so I think they're technically Midas preamps in there. They sound fine. Like you don't dial them in, and you're just like, "This is the preamp I've been missing." But
no,
for
they're clean.
$300, and you need 8 channels. It's fine.
Yeah, I bought that set of 8 from Dave when I was trying to expand before I'd gotten. Some different ones now. I've got the Octo Pre as well, but they're awesome. They're killer. I'm now setting that up the Behringers as like a mobile unit. So if I want to go do mobile recordings, it's like I don't have to take apart my desk.
Yeah, they don't sound really like anything.
Yeah, no, they're transparent. They don't do anything great, but
which I think when I finally get enough gear to run some outboard stuff, they'll probably be my either returns or my
kind of you'll use them as your A to D section for your outboard gear,
because they're not going to add anything. Like they work.
That's what I was doing before I got the Pharaohfish.
I'm actually really looking forward to the idea of, we talked about it, and no one's done this on the interwebs, so I maybe shouldn't release it on a podcast, but it would be cool to get a mic split and record a session.
Oh, yeah,
where we do the same performance, same microphone, same placement, but one set is going to the Behringers and the other set is going to the Octo Pre.
Now, would we try to... Okay, I know how we would do it. Never mind. I was going to say, we wouldn't try to do the same amount of gain on the preamp. We would just try to hit the same level in the DAW to make sure it's Yeah, so we don't get that whole volume discrepancy thing where it's like, oh, it's louder, it's better.
Yeah, and then we would import them into the same DAW.
But can I say that it is true? Louder is better.
Yeah.
To an extent.
We would just import them into the same DAW and normalize them so
Yeah,
they're
so
the same. So there's none of those discrepancies.
Cool.
But it would just be interesting to see like how much of a difference is it really.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we would do anything super complex, like just a good enough song to get the point across.
Yeah.
Because then we could do, because I would want to treat it in a way where we do, if possible, the same EQ moves. So it's literally the same mix. It would be cool to do different versions. Like it would be like there would be one version where it's the same EQ moves.
Mm-hmm.
So it is literally the same mix.
Yeah.
And then there would be 2 other versions where it would be like, here's how I mixed it using the same plugin order.
But maybe I did different things.
But I had to like, oh, this one really emphasizes a little bit more 3K. So I
Yeah.
had to like take 1 more dB out and just that real nerdy complexity.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And then it'd be cool because then I think it could also then blend in an idea of like, hey, you only have 8 channels. How did we record this drum kit? You know,
Yeah.
or how did then we do the guitars or the vocals? Honestly, when you get to that point, it's kind of easy because you don't need 8 channels to record guitars.
No. Drums.
Or maybe you do.
Drums screw it all up. I mean, I guess if you're blending tones where...
Yeah, or if you're wanting to kind of like shoot them out, like say you've got 4
Yeah.
different speakers in your cab and you've got 2 cabs, you've got 8 different speakers, and
Yeah,
you want to have them all up at the same time. That sounds like fun. I'm getting excited.
It does sound fun. It's fun to... do this.
Hey, I want to give a little PSA out there. If you've got a piece of gear that you don't use anymore, don't sell it. Keep it. Unless you absolutely know you want to trade it in for something better. But if you're just like, I don't really use this anymore, keep it. I'm glad that I did because I had an old headphone amp, an old little Behringer headphone amp that we used to use back in one of my bands for rehearsals, 4-channel. And
The
recently,
one that sometimes you have to hit it to mono to get it to work, and the other times it runs in stereo fine.
oh, I don't know. I never had that issue with it.
Oh, I have the Behringer headphone amp, and I have to run.
Is it a rack mount one?
Uh-huh.
Oh no, I have
Oh.
mine's like a little box that you just sit on the table, which kind of sucks. But I actually kind of like that because now it's a little more portable than
Yeah.
it being rack mounted. Because I'm just gonna run the outputs on my Snake into it, into the basement,
That's smart.
into the live room downstairs. But because I have got 2 sets of headphones, but I needed to have 4 the other day, and I was like, shoot. And I was like, I was like online on Sweetwater looking at ones, and I was like, I saw a headphone. I was like, that looks really familiar. I was like,
Oh,
wait, I have that. And I went downstairs and I ripped apart a couple drawers and I found it and I was like, woo! Don't have to spend money. I already did it.
Yeah, there's that part of me that's like, oh, I should sell half the stuff that I don't use, and then there's always that part of me that's like, but
It's like that unbalanced patch bay that I got. You know,
Yeah.
Dave was like, yeah, you should just get a balanced one, honestly. Like, I mean, you can make it work, but like, and then I'm just going to keep that unbalanced one because who knows? I might use it for, patching in and out guitar cables to different amps or something like that. So
yeah, that's super useful.
yeah.
I had to do something weird. I don't even remember the other day where I was trying to route something, and I was like, I'm really happy I figured out how to route this. Oh, it was the other month there was a recorded broadcast from something I was doing at the theater, and it was like someone brought in like a camera to film the performance, but they only had an 1/8 inch like input,
Mhm.
the 3.5 millimeter.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I don't have one.
I don't know what to do. So I did 2 turnarounds on the back of the console, 2 XLR, to a DI, to an RCA to 1/8 inch cable.
Oh my God. And I bet you it sounded amazing.
It actually didn't lose that much quality.
It didn't?
Which was surprising.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Dude, I love when I figure out some wacky routing stuff. Like, that's so much fun when you're like, oh, if I route this here and this here. And that's what I love about patch bays. It's like, although they're not like that complicated once you learn them, it's still fun to just be like, I patch this in here, and then here and here. It's just fun making those like physical connections like that.
I want to try this new live mix routing thing. There's a live sound engineer that I like who started the Live Sound Bootcamp podcast, where he runs his mains off of a matrix.
Ooh.
So only the band goes to technically the master fader, and then on his output bank, there is a vocal bus that has the vocals and the effects to it. So then he can push the vocals up or bring the vocals back, and it won't mess with how the master bus compressor is set for.
Kind of like, I mean, that's how I mix.
In Pro Tools, yeah.
That's really cool. So he does that live as well. I think that's smart because vocals. I think the only thing that's kind of similar to the vocals would be the bass, honestly, just because of it's a single note at one time. It's a monophonic instrument, whereas guitar is polyphonic. Drums are polyphonic, yeah, and they're more transient based. So I think that's kind of the only thing. But you wouldn't want the bass and your vocals together because the bass got so much low end, it would be compressing the hell out of them. So I think it makes sense to do it that way. Yeah, because
I don't really on my more like on like certain festival gigs where I just have to do like the simplest routing possible, where it's literally just in to out, then some effects. Like I'm not really grouping anything together because there's just too much going on to manage the day. I was like, I might have to start doing that.
Oh,
because I would never use master bus compression because the vocals in the small rooms and like bars and like festivals and stuff that I'd mixing, like the vocals would have to be the main thing in the PA just because the bands are playing loud. So
yeah, you can already hear them regardless of your console.
If I put any sort of like rational master bus compression on it, it would
just destroy everything.
Yeah. And even light stuff, like on the master bus, I'm never really going more than like 2 to 1.
Yeah.
No, but even just trying to glue it together, there was like one point where I was like, my master bus was at like 1.1 to 1. And I was like, this is point. Like, there's no point to even doing that.
Do you know of, actually, I wondered about that because pretty much everybody I talk to, everybody I know, doesn't really compress their master bus very hard. Maybe 2 dB, maybe 3.
Right.
Maybe. Do you know of any engineers, like famous engineers, that like to really compress their master bus? I can't really think of any. I mean, I guess you can count limiting. Well, I mean, it's not. Yeah. But I would not that. I mean, like actual like compression, like throwing like the SSL or
at like 8 to 1 on the master bus.
Yeah, like 8 to 1, or maybe like hitting it at like 5 or 6 dB or more. Like,
I mean, I guess if your noise floor is like that low.
Yeah.
But at that point, you would just put a limiter on it to bring it up. Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have messed around with using on my like doing the instrument bus thing, instrument bus and then vocal bus, and then doing like the SSL G comp thing and compressing it really hard, like 8 to 1 the instrument bus, but then dialing the mix knob back on like the Plugin Alliance one or one of the Slate ones. That can be kind of cool because you get this really aggressive sound, but then you blend it in with your dry sound for the entire instruments.
So you're almost mixing in parallel, just on
you're mixing the whole thing in parallel, which is pretty cool. But like I wouldn't do that on the entire master bus with vocals. I don't know. Maybe that would be kind of cool.
Were you at the Oasis Fest that we played in September that I was doing sound for during the day when I figured out that on the Allen and Heath consoles you can do the parallel path just right on the channel?
No,
just a little button. Yeah.
Oh, that's sick.
And because I was working, my buddy Matt, who I work with, was my like A2 for the day. And I was like, this could go really well or this could go really bad. And I hit it on the kick drum and he was like, no, that instantly sounds better. So then I parallel compressed every single fucking channel.
Nice.
I was like, this just sounds better.
And you'll have to do like a bunch of crazy routing. You can just do it right on the
I just mixed it. I set everything to like 50-50.
Nice.
And I just parallel processed it. And it was awesome.
Ooh, speaking of compression, I know you don't subscribe to them, but guess what Slate just released?
I saw that they did.
They finally did the SSL channel EQ or compressor. FG Dynamics.
Not the bus comp.
Not the bus channel comp. Just the channel comp. Because they already have the bus comp. I'm pretty sure it's the FG Gray. Yeah. But they finally did the channel comp, and then it's got the... it's not just the comp. It's the gate and the...
Expander.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're making it tougher for me to not go back.
It sounds pretty good. I
talked to Shane after the last episode. I called him back because... we only talked for like 4 minutes on air, and he was just like, yeah, I'm back on the Slate bundle. And I was like, well, he kind of has he's like, some of the stuff's really good, and he goes, I'm also not convinced that some of the other stuff is just dummy knobs. Or he's just like, is this really doing anything?
Does he have like an example? Does he have one in particular that he was saying?
No, he did, but I don't remember what it was. But we were talking about, I was like, I miss Repeater, Verb Suite Classics, and the Gray. I'm
Verb Suite Classics.
When you leave.
What's up?
I'm signing up when you leave.
They have more reverbs now. They've got Liquid Sonic's lustrous plates. Oh,
they had
those are great.
Yeah, I stopped right when the Kilohertz bundle came in.
Dude, that's awesome. Actually, I've been using that, and knowing you and how you like to do a bunch of whack ass shit. It's awesome. I'm getting into it. Like
I just got to the point
you
where
know
like,
me. I come from like
my plugin menu was like it was too much. Where I was just like,
dude. Well, I mean, just like do a mix. Like bring up something old and just bring up the Slate stuff. Everything that comes to Slate, the kilohertz, the Slate, the Liquid Sonics, the repeater, and just try like mess around with that. Because I mean, dude, the kilohertz stuff is so cool. I got some crazy stuff going on because you can do. That one of their plugins is called Snap Heap, and it takes every single one of their plugins and you can put them all in different orders and route the chains differently. And then they've also got Multipass where you can multiband anything. So any of their plugins, you can then do like a multiband sidechain thing with it. It's sick. I'm really digging their stuff. I mean, when they put the 2A in there, I was like, all right, well, that's kind of nice because then I can really build the chains that I like to build just in the one. I find my CPU is not nearly as destroyed when I just focus, like when I'm doing this, because I find like I make not smaller moves. I do less work now because I can keep it all within like this one, rack. And I don't know, maybe it's placebo effect, but I like it. I feel like I've gotten some better results since switching back.
Yeah.
But I still use the PA stuff though because I do really like the Shadow Hills, the black box. That black box is amazing. That is a magic.
Oh yeah,
plugin.
there's certain UA stuff that's never not going to be in the chain.
And then I love the Townsend, the Townhouse bus compressor. It's like a version of the SSL comp that's just got a little different mojo to it that I really like.
I need a good G comp in my life. I haven't really had anything to mix since I've like found new plugins though. It's like all that I've had to mix is just our audio stuff.
Well, you have something to record on Monday.
I will, yeah.
Yeah. Is that a confirmation on air?
It should be, yeah. I mean, so long as nothing else comes up.
Yeah, nothing else comes up. Yeah, like paying work.
Yeah. No offense.
No, it's okay.
The
only thing we could pay you in is like coffee and pizza.
I don't want to be paid in pizza. There's so many gigs where it's just like...
yeah, that's true.
Tech crew want pizza, and it's just like, well, I don't have to pay for food, so yeah, I guess I'm eating pizza for the...
I'll always take pizza. I mean, our whole thing is like at every gig with Nick, I'm like, Nick's like, hey, are you guys down? I'm like, yeah, I'm available, but is there going to be food there?
No, I like food, but it's just like every like non-tech, like certain venues when like the front of house people, and not like engineers, but like the actual like... people in the front of the building are just like, tech crew wants food, and it's just like, well, we ordered you pizza, and it's like, no,
darn it.
I don't want pizza.
Or it's subs or pizza. Yeah. We had a pizza party the other night at work.
It's like, can I get a salad? I'll pay for my own. Just order the salad. And they're like, well, we can't read your cart. And I'm like,
oh man. So have you had any? I guess it's been a week since we were last here. Trying to think of any other info or any other news, any cool things that have happened. I haven't. I did another session. I did a drum session. I used the damn it, what's it called? The big fat snare.
nice.
Thing. Used that again. Loved it.
I realized that when you left, I was like, I didn't let Phoenix use my buyer.
I know.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting a really awesome snare tone. I was really, really happy with it. But yeah, I definitely want to do some video of some of these upcoming sessions. I think it'd be pretty cool. We could do some stuff.
I saw Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah, finally?
It was really good. Yeah.
I loved it. Wasn't it good?
It was.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think it's really cool how they've set it up. I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, like, come on. So,
I won't spoil it. It was cool.
Yeah, I liked it. I'm glad how they've set up now that they can kind of do this, like, more college phase for Spider-Man and kind of give us the I think I appreciate how they didn't repeat a lot of the stuff that we've already seen in the Andrew and the Toby ones. They kind of did their own thing, but I know a lot of like diehard Marvel fans were like, "Well, this isn't Spider-Man. Why is he like always in the shadow of the Avengers and Iron Man?" But I dig now that they've set it up that now they can really do standalone Spider-Man in the Spider-Man world. It's about him. I think it's really cool.
They had to tie him in somehow. And they tied him in phenomenally.
I thought it was really good. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you're never going to be as good as the comics. The comics can do crazy stuff, and they can retcon whenever they want, but like you can't retcon.
Be like, well, this is a different universe now, or they have to have this cohesive thing.
Well, and I love how they've set it up now that like if Sony's in talks about, I've heard allegedly Sony's in talks about rebooting the Amazing Spider-Man series with Andrew, which would be incredible. I'd love it if
I
they
never
did that.
watched any of those. I didn't get into Spider-Man as a superhero until the Tom Holland ones.
Oh, see, like for me growing up, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies were like that was everything to me.
I watched those as a little kid, and then I got a little older, and I was just like, it was so early 2000s. Like,
I still love them,
cringy.
except for the third one.
Yeah,
Spider-Man 2 is still awesome to me when he fights Doc Ock. Like
Yeah.
the whole train scene. But I loved the Amazing Spider-Man ones too. I think just because of I think I was like 16 or 17. So like, I was like the same age as he's supposed to be in those movies. And I was
Gotcha.
just like, oh, I like him, man, because he's not like I liked how he was this cool blend of like, he skated and I thought he was kind of cool, but he was just the weirdo kid. He wasn't necessarily just like nerdy like Toby was. He was just this like kind of this outcast. Because I feel like, I don't know, we both went to high school and like those stereotypes don't really apply anymore. Like there weren't really any like nerdy kids. Like there were weird kids like us where it was like, we kind of liked sports, but we weren't jocks, but like we also liked math and we also liked reading.
Like math,
you know what I meant. But like nobody really falls into those defined boxes. I mean, there were a few at school, but nowhere near as much as they portray in like comics and TV shows. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore. Like cheerleading's not cool anymore.
There was, I forget.
Do you have an OnlyFans, bro? Like that's what's cool.
Someone shared on Instagram, and it was a screen cap of a tweet, and it was someone who's in our age, and the thing just said like, all these people now claiming to be emo, you weren't there when we were going through it.
Dude, I know, right? Oh, man.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, dude, I have photos of me with, like, fucking piercings and the black hair covering my face. I had pink hair, always black shirts, pants that did not fit me. Like, I got bullied a lot. I got called the F word and a lot of other words at school, man. If you didn't know, no, you weren't there, man. You don't know. All these kids are like, when we were young fest, like, screw you, man. Like, quit profiting off of my pain. It's like, dude, I know. I see so many kids from, like, high school. They're not kids anymore, but, like.
We're adults now, yeah.
My, like.
Contemporaries.
My contemporaries. My classmates post about, like, oh, my God, I love this band. I'm like, no, you didn't. I remember showing you them one time. And you're like, bro, this music is so, like, and then using,
not so nice
language. Be like, bro, this stuff is for. Yeah, and it's like, oh yeah, okay. And now you want to be PC, bro? Screw you. Screw you. Oh man, like I said, I got a lot to work through this week.
Phoenix came in and he was like, I'm pretty irritable today.
Oh yeah, I got a lot of feelings today.
We should probably dive into this.
Let's dive in. So.
We started and then we got distracted.
I had fun though. I think this is what the people come to see.
That's what you're here for.
The tangents, the rants, the cosines.
So yes, now that we have drums recorded and in our DAW, first step probably appropriate mix prep, as I like to call it. Gain staging is important. Hopefully you got that in on your preamps, but don't clip unless you're going for that effect. And what is the digital sweet spots like between -18 and -12?
I don't really
give or take.
I've watched some stuff recently, like on like Fab Filter and other things like that, and I do like leaving a little bit of headroom just because my mix from a raw static mix to then processing, it's just gonna get a little bit louder. I mean, unless I'm really paying attention and wanting to keep it at a certain level. I don't know. I try not to go past 0.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But that's the only thing. But even then, you still got like technically you've got infinite headroom. The only thing that's actually clipping is your like converters or your speakers. It's not actually the DAW that's going to clip the computer.
I just shoot for it to jump up. I like it to live in the lemon lime area.
No, I completely agree. I live in the lemon lime zone too.
Are
we coining that? Is that us? Can that be another shirt?
It should be. Yeah.
I live in the lemon lime zone.
We could do a Sprite parody.
Ooh,
that'll sell.
That will.
Because people are familiar with Sprite branding, and then we will get a cease and desist and be like, we already made X amount of dollars.
Is Sierra Mist still around? Didn't they change it to something else?
Isn't it just Mist now?
Maybe it
is. Did Sierra get mad?
She got fired.
Yeah, so, proper gain staging. Obviously, probably some degree of time aligning and
Yeah,
nudging.
I think for me, my next step after gain staging is, I mean, you should have already done this prior to finishing tracking, but double check your phase.
Yes, I have check
yeah.
phase in all caps.
Yeah, I think that's probably the first thing I do before I make any other moves. Because I mean, when you start making, because my next move after that is to do some high pass and low pass, just clean up.
Yeah,
but that can start doing some phase things.
I will have my faders up, and I'll just get a relative level.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing this with the song looping because I try to just get familiar
Yeah.
with it. And then I'll just start doing some general like panning.
Mm-hmm.
And this topic might get a little hot later. Yeah, and then it's typically some high pass, some low pass stuff.
Are you? Yeah, so I'll definitely high pass and low pass my snare, my toms, my room,
And my overheads.
But my kick drum, I won't high pass. I like letting all that low end stuff. I'll tame that later, but I won't tame it with high pass with like a filter. I'll tame it with like multi-band compression, because I find that the sub that I get from a natural kick. Now maybe it would be different if I was recording a sub kick, but just from a regular in and out, I'm not getting enough sub that I really want to control it. I don't mind that 20 hertz being down there because I like that push feeling, and I'll just tame it. I don't want to cut it.
I don't.
That's just me.
I mean, sometimes I will. It just depends on so many factors. But it's there. It's not wrong to put a high pass on your kick. It's not wrong to leave it wide open. It kind of just depends.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong.
What all you need.
I've just found that for me recently, I for the longest time was high passing it, like maybe up to like 30 hertz, or maybe sometimes like 40. And I'd find I was always trying to add back in that low end feel, not that audible zone, but I'd notice in my sub or in the car, it was like, man, I'm not feeling it on the floor. I'm not feeling it under my feet the way some of these other mixes do. And I found that just starting my mix off by not high passing the kick, I would all of a sudden be like, oh, there it is.
That is something to be aware of, because for the longest time, I would always do like these extreme low end boosts in my mixes, and now I don't really do it that much these days. I would rather err on maybe there's not enough low end and it comes from just getting better at mastering, because I really don't like to cut if I don't have to. I'm not saying I never cut, like you have to make space, but if it's not, I think we said it in the kick drum episode when I was talking about the D6, where it's just like, if I need a softer kick drum and the only mic I have is the D6, I'll make it work, but it's not going to be my first choice, because I'm not going to want to EQ out where emphasis has already been placed in something. I feel like that ruins
the tonality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
like
feel
you
that
can make it work, but
way
ideally
about the low end, where I'd rather, if I'm mastering it or if somebody else is mastering it, I want the low end to be balanced, but if it needs to be 3 dB hotter, I'd rather just have the mastering engineer be able to do that. So I'm not handcuffing them. Like, even when because even when I master songs, I'd rather add 3 dB of low end than have to EQ out 3 dB of low end.
Yeah, because I feel like when you start pulling it, you might start cutting stuff that you don't actually want cut. Whereas I feel like when you are adding that low end, especially if it's somewhere below 60 hertz, it's most likely that person's already high passed that out of the guitars and everything else.
And even if you add a little bit of extra stuff to a range you're not necessarily wanting to affect, I feel like it's not as detrimental to the overall mix
as ripping it out.
Like, yeah, you're going to add your shelf in at 100, but that's going to, probably boost up to 200. So you're not really ruining anything by adding that, slight EQ to 100 to 200. But if you take away some of that, then I know you're only trying to get rid of some of the subbiness, but then some of that low mid-range is going away as well, and that can be pretty detrimental.
Yeah, I agree. I'd rather send a mix to a mastering engineer and they just add to it rather than subtract. And not even just EQ, but like just in general. I think we kind of touched on that on the last episode as well. I think I said about musicians, like, hey, you want to have your stuff set up to a point where the engineer's not having to, fix what you've done. They just have to add it. And I feel like making cuts at that stage in the game of mastering I feel like that kind of is fixing it, where it's like, oh man. Now, unless the caveat to that is, if they've then done like, let's say they've done like maybe like a Pultec style boost where it is a wide band and then they want to cut part of what they've done, that's different. But like if you send your mix,
but that's more of a creative.
That's a creative thing.
Like,
that's not
tonal choice. It's not just
like, oh man, I got this mix and 400 hertz is just like blocking everything. Like that should have been fixed in the mix stage.
Yeah. Because then, especially in mastering, like, you know, you have to. And it was instilled in us when we went to school that it's just like you have to think about the final product even when you're doing your putting the first microphone up in the session, where it's just like, you know, if there's so much 400 and something, I could leave it for the mix engineer to fix or the mastering engineer to fix. But if he's trying to get rid of 400 hertz in my kick drum, but then, you know, the mastering engineer is also taking out 400 hertz in the vocal, and that kind of needs to be there. So, you know, it's just about finding the balance, and there's so many ways to go about it, and drum tuning and rooms and mics all play a part of that. So it's you know, I don't want to say trial by, or you know, what is it? I don't know. You just I had the phrase.
I guess we I think one of the show notes, but I think this is probably prior to gain staging and your first little cleanup moves, but editing.
Yeah, editing. Yep.
How much? I'm not even going to ask the question. It's all dependent of the style of music. I feel for like more open styles of music, I'm going to hope that I don't have to have edited. When it comes to that more highly produced radio sound, like I don't care how good you are. You could have played the best drum take ever. I'm still going to edit it because that's what that sound is. It's not a matter of your performance wasn't good enough. Yeah. It's just if you're going for that, anything you hear on the radio, like any modern day from the last 20 years on the radio, has been edited to a T.
Yeah.
To a tight T.
It is.
That's just the sound, the drums, everything. And so if that's what the sound, I think artists don't realize that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I think sometimes their ego gets in the way. It's like, dude, this isn't saying that you're not good. Like you could be the best drummer in the world. You're still getting edited because I don't care how good you are. You know, in a 3-minute song, you're not going to play it literally perfect. But that's what people expect to hear. They expect to hear that computerized sound. And so, you know.
Yeah, and there's, you know, I'm not super into that sound. Yeah. There's technical music that I like, but it's a very finite amount of artists in that genre where I like these 4, and that's about it. So it's cool when they do it because they're the best at it, but so, you know, I don't need to listen to every single gent project that's been released.
Yeah, but I'd say almost pretty much any rock or metal project that's been released in the last 20 years has been edited. Like, there's editing.
And I don't say don't edit. Like there's sometimes I don't have to, for the stuff I like to work on, and maybe this is by choice, is that like I like taking projects where I don't have to spend 20 hours of editing to get the song done. There's a new thing. And I had kind of been doing this, but I listened to, it was on Andrew Shep's podcast. He was talking to Joe Barresi, and they were talking about editing. And I think it was editing the new Tool record, where he's like, I would, you know, nudge things so they all landed on one. But if you think about it, you know, if you want to just have internal musical dynamics throughout the song, as long as they all hit on one, they can kind of diverge a little bit in like microseconds, and then that's what makes one feel really big. So as long as the first note of every bar is on, then they can drift a little bit, and that will just give you a simple like, we're on.
Exactly. And I think the other thing is too, like anytime you've got, you know, big impactful moments, you do want to make sure that that's really tight, because I mean, if you just think about the physics of a speaker, it can only go forward and back, and it can only do that so quickly that it's like, if you've got a kick drum hit and your bass drum hit, you've got your kick drum hit and your bass and your guitar, and they're all slightly hitting out of time from each other when they're supposed to be hitting in sync, that speaker is going to go da-da-da, and it's not going to be as tight.
A speaker can only move 2 ways, only one at a time.
Yeah, so it's not going to react the same way as if you tighten it up enough to have them all hit on the same time. Part of that is performance. You know, one, obviously have the artist perform as close as they can, but that can be a thing that's like, man, they could be on, but if you're really going for a tight, punchy sound, and that's not even just in rock and metal music, that could be in pop music, whatever it is. It's like, think about that. You know, if those hits are slightly off from each other, you're fighting against physics.
Yeah, and that doesn't necessarily mean like set a static click track and edit everything to the same
Oh,
BPM.
yeah,
like
no.
because you think about
They
it.
don't have to be all on the down. It doesn't have to be all perfectly on one. They just have to be with each other. You know? And then
it
there
doesn't
could
have to be.
Yeah. Those 4 beats could be slightly longer beats between each other, so it gives you a groove. But just make sure that the kick and the bass and the guitar are all hitting those beats together, whatever time they're doing it in.
Yeah, edit to the musician, not the click track.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say a lot more of the modern radio stuff is the musicians. I like to edit the musicians to each other.
Yeah, I'll definitely take like whoever's got the tightest playing.
And that could be drummer, guitar player, bass player. I pick...
Like, that's the person. Maybe not even necessarily tightest. Whoever I think has the best groove for the song.
The feel, yeah.
And typically that will be the drummer or the bass player, in my opinion. Sometimes it can be the guitar player. Sometimes the guitar player does the scratch track, and it's like, damn, that's the groove right there. And it's like the drummer then is listening to the click, and they're playing to the click. And although everybody's on, it's like, nope, I'm going to nudge those drums a little bit to really be in line with that guitar, because that guitar is just, that's the groove right there.
Yeah, because I've done drum sessions where people with the more old school mindset are running it. And it's just like, we're on the 17th take of the song, and literally if we would have just overdubbed this fill, we could have been done an hour ago.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of playing the entire song
to get
over
one part.
and over and over. It's like, dude, just punch in. Like, come on. It's 2022. Like, we know you can probably play it. Every musician has done stuff, but it's like, you're going to save time, money, and like, I mean, that's the biggest thing. That's the thing that I don't get is like,
if it's a great performance and I have to like, you flammed a kick and snare hit, we can take care of that. That's fine.
We don't have to redo the whole damn thing.
And I feel the same way about vocals too, where it's like, I would much rather have to break out like a Waves tune and just nudge 1 or 2 notes down because the feeling's there than being like,
exactly.
Yeah, you got a little sharp for like 4 words, so we're gonna have to play this whole 6-minute song again.
Yeah, that drives me insane. And it's just like, come on, like, what are you trying to prove? Like, you're trying to create art here. This isn't a competition. Like, you don't have to prove that like you're the absolute best. It's just like, dude, if you sang this part, like you said, if you sang this part and like your delivery and the way you said the words were awesome, but they were a little pitchy, let's tune it, bro. Like, it's a great performance. Like, then make sure when you do it live, you sing it properly. Sure. But like in the recording, it's like you're trying to capture a snapshot of the best it could possibly be. That's what a recording is.
The emotion's more important than the technique to an extent. But yeah, you know, I've kind of taken that editing thing to heart, where I edit them to each other, and I make sure that the emphasized hits are all
together.
Yeah, because there's people on YouTube that you can watch where like some guys like, I time corrected Michael Jackson songs, or someone time corrected Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it's just like, this doesn't even feel awesome.
Yeah.
And what it is, it's because Dave Grohl is lagging between 4 and 1 on the crash hits.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't have that, hey, now the crash is hit, and he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, but it's
it'd be
1,
such a weird
2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, no, it's total groove. But you can tell that though that when they all hit, they're all hitting together. Now
They're
whether
all
that was
landing-
through
yeah.
editing, which
It was on tape, so probably not.
well, I mean, not editing in the way that we know, but
Right.
like, oh hey, Kurt played everything a little behind the drums. We'll just slide the tape over. That kind of editing,
for sure. Yeah,
because Kurt was a pretty messy guitar player.
he was,
And
yes.
so I feel like one, also recording was different back in that time period where it wasn't like, hey, we'll knock this album out in a week because we can edit stuff like that. It was, oh, hey, here's a $2 million. Go spend 3 months and try to get this guitar take of you playing those 3 chords. It's such a different experience, man.
Yeah, because I had a song on an album that I worked on over the spring, summer, and fall. And the drum performance, they were not recorded well. It was a good player, but it was kick drum on every single quarter note.
Okay.
And it was a very slappy, funky bass thing. So there was just this low end thing. So I had to go in and...
so that you've got this busy slap bass thing going on. You've got these quarter note kicks that are just everything is not lining up.
Yeah, so I did have to go in and I manually removed all the kicks from the 2 and 4. Because the way I like drums is I typically don't like the kick and snare to hit at the same time in a groove.
Neither do I.
I like to leave that note open for space and the bass guitar. So then you have your kick pulsing on 1 and 3, and then you have your low end of the bass on 2 and 4 with the snare drum. And I feel like that makes a more cohesive groove. That's just how I like to hear drum parts.
Yeah.
Your mileage may vary.
The only
So,
time I
yes,
like kick and snare hitting together is either one like a blast beat, which they sometimes won't even.
Which they have to.
They have to, or if it's like a build up, like a dun 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 dun, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But in a beat like 1, 2, 3, 4, kick on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4. But if it's like 1, it bothers me.
Literally 4 minutes of this is the kick drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1,
Yeah, don't be
2,
playing the snare
3,
then.
4.
Or
Yeah.
play the snare in between. I don't know.
Yeah, so that was one of those things where I high passed the shit out of the overhead.
Yeah,
and
to get the kick out of there.
The whole kit had to be sample replaced.
Let's start there. I find that all right. So we've got your gain, we've got your editing, we've got your gain staging.
All right.
Double check your phase.
For editing though.
Okay.
Are you cleaning up
Oh, I know
your
where you're going with this.
toms, or are you going to dial in a gate or an expander, or does it depend on the style of music?
It 100% depends on the style of music. Well, actually, okay. One of the things I've been doing recently. So I used to be of the school of I just cut everything out because I never found a gate that worked that I really liked. It was always just like I would spend so long automating a gate at certain points because it's like you know. That's a point though. When you're tracking drums, make sure they're hitting the toms at the same velocity. Now, it is different if there is an intentional dynamic build. Your gate's not going to catch that.
Right.
You know, you'd have to automate your gate. But let's say you're doing a standard rock song where there's really not a lot of dynamics. It's all just heavy hitting.
Yeah.
Make sure those tom hits are clean. Make sure they're being hit because then you can save a lot of time. You could gate that.
Yeah.
But what I do now is I will create a triggered track. I'll create a triggered drum
MIDI
track.
spike?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the MIDI spike. Whether I'm actually going to use samples or not,
I've never done that.
it's awesome. And then I'll use that to trigger my gate on the toms. That's what I do. I find it's a lot quicker.
Because the MIDI's at like what, max velocity, so that
yeah,
gate just
that
opens.
gate just automatically opens. It doesn't matter how hard the drum was actually hit. It'll open up because you've got it key spiked. I love that. And then if I am, then I might not even do a MIDI spike. If I am going to be using samples, then I'll just use that sample as the gate opener. So then I think that's really awesome. That's the way I prefer to do it. But if not, on some of the more raw stuff that I've been doing, I'll bring them up again. The slate drum gate is pretty damn impressive because it's not just gating; it's also debleeding.
Yeah,
it's
that's cool.
Some wizardry, man. There are some animals were sacrificed to create
some
that.
science behind it. Love it. I don't know if a certain instructor told your class the same thing, but I had one that basically told my class that like expanders suck and they're stupid. And this person was definitely a part of that no gate life just across the board, because everybody's got a different way of going about it. So I never used an expander. So I was at like Bob's house one day, like in the last 2 years, and I was like, I don't know what an expander does. I was just told they suck. So what does an expander do? And Bob's like, it's a gate that's just soft the whole time. And I was like, he's like, so it doesn't cut out the bleed, it just compresses the bleed, and then when the things hit, it opens up. I was like, oh, that's convenient, and now I use expanders on everything.
Okay, nice. So you use those on your toms. So you're not completely getting rid of everything. You're letting a little bit of that room still bleed in.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff that I'm working on,
you want that. It helps kind of tie the whole cohesiveness together of the kit.
It's a looser musical structure. If I was, doing a real technical thing, like for Marzi stuff, absolutely, I'm cutting out all the cymbal bleed. But for the stuff that I dig on, I'm pretty much
you use an expander
exclusive to the SSL expander.
Yeah, it's great.
So,
all right. So after you've got that going on, how about with the snare? I have seen some people do that with the snare. Do you do an expander on the snare as well? Or do you let that track just kind of bleed in your...
It will depend on the amount of ghost notes that the drummer plays and how well they have played them.
I will sometimes, if I'm really... Again, this is for a little more technical music. I probably won't do this in a more open arrangement, but I'll separate the ghost notes onto a different track.
I'll do that sometimes too, yeah.
Because it's almost like they are ghost notes, but like on record, you kind of want them to be
just
audible enough that you go, I think he's hitting the snare drum there.
Yeah, I used to get really wrapped up into like everything's got to be super, super clean. And I think I texted you at like 1 a.m. once. I was like, if you listen to American Idiot by Green Day, when he hits the kick drum in those parts, you can hear the snare bottom rattle and you can hear the snare rattle in the room. So I'm just I'm over all this shit.
I'm over all this shit.
Like, because that record sold.
Yeah, hold on.
millions.
Repeat that for people. Everyone needs to go check out. Did you say is it on the song American Idiot?
I will put it on the playlist.
Yeah, put that on the playlist.
I'm pretty sure it's American Idiot because I'm pretty sure there's just that kick, 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 go. Dun-dun-dun. Yeah.
What isn't there a Beatles song that's got a clearly audible tape cut on it? It's not Yellow Submarine. It's something whale.
Probably. I'm not the biggest Beatles fan.
Yeah, but I know they've got a couple songs where there's like some clear tape cuts that are like completely messed up, but it's brilliant because they just rolled with it.
We're about to have a guest.
Ooh, we've got a guest on the show.
Maggie.
Hello, Maggie. What do you think about kick drums?
Dogs are in.
Welcome to the podcast, Animals. Hello.
You can audibly hear on Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones tape cuts on drum punch-ins.
I love it.
Still a great song. It's better than anything I've ever written.
I'm 95% convinced on Carry On My Wayward Son, how they changed time signatures in those parts, and they've got the different parts, that those are all punch-ins. They didn't actually play those all the way through. They did each section and then just glued the tape together. I'm like, because there is that split second where it doesn't have a bleed over.
Yeah.
And it's just like, bam. It's so, like, fraction.
Talk about how good that sounds for when it was recorded. It sounds
song?
so modern.
Dude, I love Kansas. I don't know why I didn't put them on my list. Can we just throw that song on there?
We'll put it. This will be creative drum sounds and things we missed. But back to my point, yes.
Kansas is amazing.
On American Idiot, off of Green Day's American Idiot, there is a point where it is just kick drum, and you're not really going to hear it through your phone. But if you have good headphones or a good listening environment, when he is hitting just the kick drum, you can hear the snare rattling in probably the snare bottom mic and the room mic.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, there are all of these great things to clean up your instrument sounds, but if you're going for that natural vibe, you're going to hear snare wires rattle when, the kick drum is hit. It's a good job to probably try to eliminate that as much as possible. But if you're hitting drums as hard as Trey Cool hits drums, no matter how you have it tuned, in that tight of space, they're gonna rattle. So you don't have to clean it out as long as the performance is there. I feel
like it wouldn't sound the same if you cut that stuff out.
If it's a worse performance, you kind of do have to do more, and you just need to get all that stuff out of the way because it's all just creating a mush. But if your mics are placed right and the player's clean enough, you can get away with
tight
leaving.
Enough. Yeah. It's like, he's hitting those kick drums probably really consistently. I'm trying to think about it in my head. I haven't listened to that song in a while, but I mean, I guarantee you all those kick hits are probably really consistent. Yeah. So that snare rattle is also consistent. So it becomes part of the sound. It's not just this off-time weird buzzing thing. It's like, okay, it just sounds like a drum kit.
Yeah, I'll add that to the mix for sure for people to listen to. I was really excited when I heard that. I was like,
how far up do you high pass your overheads, or do you not even high pass them?
Genre dependent.
Yeah. I feel like we could save so much time to be like genre dependent for everything.
Genre dependent.
How do you guys mix a drum? How do you guys mix drums? Genre dependent. Lemon lime method, baby.
If it's if I'm trying to get the overall drum kit sound, like toms included, probably up to like 100 or 125, and then I might like low shelf some of that stuff out.
Yeah.
If I'm going for the snare and cymbals more, probably closer up to 200.
Okay.
But if I'm going higher up, I'm using a softer slope.
Okay, so
if
like 6 dB or 12 dB slope?
If I'm going up to like 100, it's probably going to be a 12 dB. And if I'm going up higher, if I'm going past 200 on high passing my overheads, I'm going to use like a 6 dB per octave slope.
6D or
no 6 dB?
Okay, I thought you said 60, and I was like,
I'm going to use 60 dB per octave.
Talk about phase issues happening, because when you start getting that steep, you're like,
no, 6 dB.
Yeah, I find Very similar to you. I might pass mine up. So with more heavy stuff, where it's like I'm getting all my drum tones from the direct mics, and then I'm like using a room, and I'm looking literally just to get the cymbals. High pass all the way up to 15K. No, I'll maybe pass up to like 500 because I do find that if it's very hi hat busy, there is a body in the hi hat that's in the overheads that I don't want to get rid of. It's in that 400 area. So I might try to get like the low end of the snare and the kick out of there because I don't want any of that low end pulsing going on in the overheads.
In a small room, there is a little bit of a low end buildup. So, yeah, for a general stereo over like normal placed overhead thing, ignoring my current obsession with mono overhead.
No, but for actually, I guarantee you, in one of my songs, you'll know it. You'll love it. I guarantee you they mix the overheads like that, the way that you're talking about, because it's like an acoustic guitar, drums, bass, and so you really get a lot of that body and roomy drum sound that we talked about, and I think you get a lot of that from not just the rooms but the overheads.
Yeah, so usually, I mean, I don't need any sub in my overheads, so I am high passing them.
How about low passing? You low passing them a little bit?
No, I'm on a kick now where if there's... I'm starting to embrace the air of things. So even if like I used to back in the day, if like 12K was too much, I would just high pass it like down to 10K, where now I'll just dip out that frequency range of overheads. And same thing like with guitar too, whereas like sometimes 8K gets enough.
Yeah.
So I'll dip out some 8K and then I'll leave all the high end of my guitars.
Yeah, no, I actually will find I won't go into it too much because this isn't about guitars, but I am definitely low passing my guitars a lot these days, down to like 10K, because there's just a lot of excess noise up there. Unless it's like a clean guitar. I'm talking about like distorted metal guitars.
That's fair.
Especially because there's so many layers to things in that style of music, where it's like you've got 3 layers of guitar tracks, maybe you've got synthesizer, maybe you've got all kinds of percussive elements that are sitting in that range. It's like I'm really sculpting, but in a more... I'll call it natural mix and a more, not hyper realized mix. I definitely will let a lot of that noise in there because you want it. It's part of what adds that vibe.
Yeah, and it may be just because in live I'm filtering everything. So when I'm recording, to not just go. When I first started getting back into live sound and it became like heavy in my workload, my studio mixes would suck because I was doing just like live sound approaches. So I feel that if I mix differently in the box in Pro Tools or whatever, a different approach means it keeps it kind of fresh. Yeah. So I'm not going to mix it in a way that's going to damage the song. So yeah, I might not high pass. I get them confused sometimes. My kick drums, but if there's like a 60 hertz build up, I'll just dip some 60 hertz out of there or something.
So I feel like, do you do any more cleanup at this point? I would say that's kind of, I've done the toms, I've done my high passing, low passing. I think for me now, I would start working on putting together a mix. How about you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you start? Where do you typically start with your drums? Like what's the first piece of the drum kit that you probably will start EQing, compressing?
Overheads. I used to just go down line of start with the kick in solo and then bring up the snare in solo. Not even in solo, but I would start it and I couldn't hear it in context, so I would solo it and then it would sound good and then I would unsolo it and it would sound bad. So yeah, now I start with overheads because that's where a majority of my tone. I almost treat it like I almost mix like the Glenn Johns miking technique, where I'll bring up my overheads in my rooms, and get the blend out of that, and then my kick and snare, and then I'll start to bring in the toms and anything that needs to be.
That's what I've been doing lately.
Yeah, and with that said, like my kicks, even if I'm running multiple kick mics, that's routed to a mono bus, so I'm bringing in that bus, and then I'm bringing in my mono snare bus that has top, bottom, or 2 top mics, all of that to the bus. And
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much doing the same thing. If I've got good overheads and good rooms, I'm definitely trying to get that whole body and like back end of the mix going, where it's like, okay, that's going to fill up the entire space of the mix right there, Because that's you've got your rooms and your overheads are going to be there's stuff in the center, there's stuff on every side. That's the one instrument that's got stuff everywhere. So I'm going to try to do that first, and then to then really then shape the tone and get the punch out of the drums is then I'll start bringing in the direct mics
shells, yeah,
and really start kind of shaping. Then like okay, cool, I've got this nice body, I've got this room and this punch. I think it's really dependent I'd say. My EQing of my rooms are different like every time because it really depends on the drum kit.
What you're going for. This is the hot button issue I've been waiting to get to.
Panning?
Yeah. How do you pan your drums? Are you drummer or audience perspective?
I'm drummer perspective. I can't listen to drums in audience perspective. Any record that's in there drives me nuts. I don't know why. It just I hear like drumming in audience perspective. I'm like, this is not right.
I'm an audience perspective guy.
Are you serious?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, I did not know that.
One, I started to realize a lot of records that I like to listen to are done audience perspective.
Oh,
and I was anti-audience perspective other than live for the longest time. But I have a reason why I do it that I don't think is the typical...
Real quick, if you let me ever mix a live show, I would end up mixing it drummer's perspective and people like, you'd start to be like, what the hell's going on? And I'd be like, oh, whoops.
I mean, if it's a big enough show, you're going to have outfills on both sides. So you're going to have your left and right, but then you're going to have a right and left.
Yeah.
If I mix drums, drummer perspective, they're too loud, and my mix sounds like my in-ear or monitor mix that I prefer.
Oh.
Because I am a drummer. So I mix it to how music sounds with me playing drums. Whereas if I mix it audience perspective, it gives a different approach where I mix it like I'm hearing a song.
Yeah. I feel like I want to try now. I mean, even though I'm not a drummer, I just from a perspective of I'm used to hearing music on stage. I'm used to hearing it in this context. I mean, granted, I listen to music like on my headphones in the car all the time, but
me too.
A
lot of records I like because most of them are mixed drummer's perspective, and I get it. I understand it.
I'm gonna try to mix audience perspective.
But if I mix drummer's perspective, it doesn't sound as balanced and contextual as the song deserves to. It sounds like what I like to hear in my in-ears.
So what if, though, you mix it that way and then you just flip the panning when you're done?
I have so much panning automations going on effects that I don't feel like...
Yeah, I was going to say, what if you mix it in audience perspective and then at the end you just flip your panning back around?
I mean, I guess I could...
I don't know. I feel like that would cause issues.
I could swap. I could put on like a left-right swap plugin on my master bus, but I feel like that's just I'm just gonna mix audience perspective, and people can fucking deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, most people aren't even gonna notice that. Most people that just listen to music aren't gonna notice. Like, oh wow, the hi-hat's in a different place.
If you come at me and you're like, that was mixed audience perspective and that was wrong, and I give you my reason of I create a better mix if I mix this way, because if not, it sounds like a monitor mix, and someone goes, well, fuck you, you should still mix drummer's perspective. I'm going to tell you to go to hell.
Are there anybody that gets really upset about that kind of stuff?
The YouTube comments, because that's where all the experts hang out.
That's where all the experts hang out. I love YouTube experts. I mean, we're going to be YouTube experts. That's kind of the dream.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, I think I just have always naturally just mixed in drummer's perspective. It just works. It makes sense for me. How wide do you find you mix your toms? I feel like my tom panning, again, I feel like panning is such like a...
subjective thing too.
It's like super subjective. Because my toms, I feel like my tom panning will be different depending on how they were recorded in the overheads. Because the way like that phase relationship will work and the way they line up in the overheads, it's kind of like sometimes it's like, oh man, the way the drummer's drum kit is set up is the toms aren't very spaced out, but I'm really looking for a spaced out sound, so I'm gonna have to really hard pan those
overheads,
the overheads and the tom mics to create a little bit of depth. Other times it just naturally works in, and I might be at like 30, 50, 80, for the toms, and it's fine.
I think, I don't know. I mean, if it's like a fill, sometimes I'll just automate all of my drums, even the rooms, and I'll match kind of going right to left or left to right, depending.
Yeah.
So, I'll do clever automations if it's, your typical like, it's cool to hear that to go across
I love that.
your headphones. But I will also then, if we're mixing drummer's perspective and it's a right-handed drummer, so the first rack tom is going to come out of the left side of the speakers. I will then pan all of my mics that are on the right side of the drum kit, on the ride side of the drum kit in a specific thing. Because I label my overheads in my rooms according to
which side, crash side, hi-hat side, or ride side.
Yeah, because left and right just gets too confusing.
Yeah.
So if it's...
yeah, your whole left and right thing. I mean, who has time for that, Well,
because then it comes into play. Well, were these recorded and labeled drummer's perspective?
Yeah.
So if I just label everything overhead hat, room far hat.
Yeah.
Then
well, what if the drummer is like you and they have their fucking hi-hat in the middle of their kit?
Then they're an asshole.
Or they've got like the Rev double ride. Which ride side?
Hat ride side. But they also have an X hat on the right. So
I'm surprised you didn't just immediately yank the cord out of this podcast. Quit asking me these questions.
No, so if it's done, if it's starting high tom on the left, all of my rooms that are on the right, I will pan more towards the center. So the whole image will go left to right, and then I will
and then open it
back.
Yeah. Dude, I love panning automation.
There's so many ways to do it that nothing's necessarily the right way, especially in the studio aspect. Like if it were live, it'd be like, well, you just kind of pan it out to audience. You just pan everything audience perspective.
Yeah.
And throw some stuff in your out fills or your front fills to kind of tie
in the studio you've got a little more control and you can have the time to mess with things because you're not having to react.
Like I said, as long as your drums are in phase, no creative move is technically wrong.
Yeah.
Unless it's over the top and distracting from the song. But if it's balanced within, Yeah. Sometimes I do this, sometimes I don't.
So how about let's you want to get to the kick? I want to talk about the kick real quick.
All right.
Kick real quick. Do you compress your kick? Do you compress it a lot, a little, at all?
Genre dependent.
Genre dependent.
Those are gonna be the first shirts we make.
I know, right? Genre dependent. I always compress my kick.
Usually I compress it.
I think I will always compress it. The genre dependent will be, I'll always compress it in parallel. When I say in parallel, pretty much every compressor I use has a mix knob on it these days.
Right.
So I'm not actually creating a parallel bus because they do have a parallel drum bus that I will then send everything to. And
just beat it.
Yeah, and just beat it.
Beat it.
But no, I will always have a little bit of compression on the kick. I do it just because the tone. I'm not actually looking to control the kick because I find most of the drummers that I work with, they're all pretty consistent on their kick hits.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm going to compress it. It's going to be slow attack, fast release, somewhere in the 3 to 6 to 1 ratio, depending.
The nuke one on the distressor. Distortion 3.
Yeah, I like to add, I like it when the kick drum sounds very three-dimensional, where you can almost hear the sound wave go from batter head to resonant head.
No, I like that too.
It's a kick sound I like. So yeah, if I can get a little bit more length out of the transient of the kick drum, that's why I'm compressing it to kind of get the tail up.
Yeah.
Instead of just spike.
Spike.
More of a upside down Nike symbol, if you will, of a kick shape.
What kind of so EQing with the kick? I'd say for most everything, unless I'm doing like acoustic singer songwriter, where you're going for that kind of folky thing, where you're really just looking for like a boomy kick. I think pretty much for everything else, I am looking for I'll call it like the punchy kick, and so I'm gonna probably always boost somewhere around like 8 to 10K to some degree or another,
get some of the click
to get some of that click, and it's also just that I think to me that's where the attack lies in the kick drum, and then 60 hertz. I generally, again, depends on the song and the music, but I find I really like my kick to be the lowest instrument and then the bass.
That's fair.
Unless it's like a faster song. If it's a faster song, then I might
have that.
Yeah, I might have the kick. I'll probably boost the kick at around like 120, and then whatever the fundamental would be of that kit.
Somewhere between 160 and 120.
And then the bass will take over that low end, and I'll give it the lower fundamental around 60 hertz.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, I find I'm not really scooping much out of my kick drums these days. I used to be very 400 hertz, take it out, but these days I think just because of the way I'm having kick drums tuned.
Yeah.
Again, this goes back to what we talked about. It's like
if you tune it
tuning
right,
is so important. You're not going to have to rip out so many frequencies.
It's more of just a gentle. It's not. With my kicks, I'm most of my drums these days, because I've spent a lot of time to just like properly tune them, that I'm not EQing anything out because the drum sounds bad with that frequency in. I'm EQing stuff out because there needs to be space in that frequency range for other things that are more important there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's definitely like that's the if you want to have like an end goal for how you get to be with recording is that when you're cutting, it's not because oh man this is horrible. Now sometimes you are gonna have an instrument that just it has that bad frequency.
Delivered tracks from stuff from other people, and it's just.
But I agree with you. I think ideally I want to be pulling frequencies out because I'm using that. I'm trying to make room because another instrument's fundamental frequency is in that range.
Yeah.
Kind of like with snare and guitar, depending on what I want to be more prevalent, that 1 to 3K area. It depends. If I want the snare to really cut there, I'll probably pull that out of the guitars, or I won't pull it out of the guitars. I'll multi-band compression that, side chain it.
Yeah.
How about, do you have anything more you want to say about kick processing a little bit?
No, I give it just a gentle smiley face EQ.
Gentle smiley face.
Like live, I'm ripping all that shit out. But
just destroying it.
Again, but that's just because you need to get the speakers over the stage volume.
Yeah.
So
how about snare?
Kind of the same thing. I probably high passing my snares more aggressively than I used to. But that's because I like
how far up?
150, maybe 2.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm going up there. Most of the snares that I like, their kind of fundamental is in the 200 to 250 area.
Yeah.
So I try to tune them so that they sit really well there. And then, that's not a hard and fast rule. And it's, if it's, my kind of rule is if I'm going above 200 hertz on a drum set with anything, it is a gentler slope. It's not just like...
Yeah, it's not a huge peak.
It's not a right angle just going up.
Just not even a slope, just a square.
Yeah, so it's kind of... It'll start at 200, but it's kind of like maybe just a slight dip in the 100s, and then that starts to really take out the 85 and below.
Yeah, I definitely will probably... Generally always compress pretty good on the snare.
Yeah, and I'm compressing.
Because even if I'm going for a softer song, like I've got some of my choices here, there's a good amount of compression because it's just getting a tightness to the snare, just a nice tight pop. Even if it's not like a big crack, it's still, that instrument the snare just has that popping sound to it.
Yeah, you want to, when I kind of compress a snare, I want to control some of the accent hits. And I'm not like clamping down on it where there's no room, but I want to control some of the louder hits, because that's going to carry on in my overheads anyway. And I feel like a controlled, like, snares sound really cool on accent shots through the overheads anyway, because then it just doesn't sound like the program drums where the velocity's at like, 127 max.
Yeah.
They don't sound like just fake gunshot blips.
They don't sound like gunshots going off and off.
So it's really more about bringing some of the ghost notes up. And with that being said, if you go on that approach, it does bring some of the bleed up. So just like I said in the snare episode, just make sure you're picking a mic that the bleed is usable if that's the approach you're going to take. So that's about my snare stuff. Maybe a higher ratio than the kick.
Yeah, I want a little more aggressive out of my snare.
Somewhere in the 4 to 8 range for the close mic. But like I said, most of my snare tone is coming from my overheads. Because it just gives it that depth that I like. And then a lot of my snare sounds coming from my rooms, so we'll get to that in a couple minutes.
So how about toms? What do you do for toms?
That's really genre.
I find for me it's really dependent upon how differently the toms are tuned. If they're tuned very differently, I always send them all to the same. I always send them to a stereo bus, because then I will do a little bit of like limiting on that bus, and then I'll just then send that bus to the reverb that I do. But sometimes I will actually process them all together if they're different enough, because I'm gonna cut probably up to about 100 hertz on all of them. Maybe a little lower, maybe like 80. Just because I don't like a lot of sub.
Lower for like a 16 or an 18-inch floor tom, but...
Yeah, even then for a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, though, because it's like I don't want that low-end ringing buildup that you get from like a low floor tom. Like,
I'm live, but not in the studio.
I'm content with that. You get that boom, and then it kind of goes away.
Yeah.
Especially if it's quick. Now that'd be different if I was doing something like I don't know, like some of the songs that I've referenced by that band, The Amazing Devil, where they've got those really big tribal drums. But they're also, the whole mix isn't as busy. It's not like they've got a kick drum in there. Those tribal drums are taking place of the kick drum. But if I've got your standard drum kit, then I don't want a lot of sub in my toms, I find. And that's just me. And
yeah, that's fair. If I need a subby floor tom, I'll do some weird master bus stuff where I like to do a lot of mid-side processing on my master bus, and I like to take away really everything below like 85 on the sides. But if it's a panned out floor tom thing, in those parts, I'll just automate it down, and then it'll go back up.
You'll automate the panning?
I'll automate the high pass down on the sides so that floor tom will hit and you get kind of that low ring out for a second, and then it'll just gently go
I was
back
going to say, I do automate a little bit more low end if it's like a particular, not like in a tom fill, but if there's a part where it's like an accented like boom, kind of thing, where you want that low end, almost like it's kind of replacing, instead of having like an 808 there, when you've got a drop.
Yeah, you just got
then I will automate
tom
to bring back in some of that sub. But if it's in like the chorus of a song and we're in this lift, like I don't want any of that low end ringing building up. I want to get that stuff out of the way because we're moving forward in the song. But I will do a lot of automation on that kind of EQ moves.
So yeah, again, there's usually some.
I scoop out a lot of mids on my toms.
There's some woofiness in the mid range for toms that don't need to be there, unless you're going for that super vintage sound, like you said. Knowing the gear of the eras also help. Like I said, when you referenced the Rush songs. I mean, for the most part, Gear in that day had 3 bands of EQ, so they didn't have they probably maybe didn't want some of that nasally mid-range in there, but they didn't have the option to get rid of it, so they just embraced it, and the toms were tuned like, that's one approach.
Yeah.
I don't mind that in toms. I think it's a nice, refreshing sound.
Yeah, no, I like it. Again, I think... Damn, this episode should literally just be called genre specific. Genre specific. Because, I think, but I don't know, actually. I think it's cool because I think we're getting to this point now with some of the cool modern engineering that there are. I have been hearing a lot of stuff where guys are trying to kind of break out of some of the mold of like the modern production. Because, dude, if you put on like what is it? What are the channels on Sirius XM? Like Octane and all that stuff like that. It's like
the drum kit just sounds like Pirates of the Caribbean, like dueling warships.
Yeah, it's so much. But then,
if everything's explosive, nothing's explosive. And it goes back to me why I really like the one to be tight and then there to be a little bit of...
That's so true. If everything is explosive, nothing is. That's kind of that whole...
It's like the death metal thing where the song will start out fast and then it falls apart because they can't get faster in the part that needs to be faster. It's like if you just played... You could play at that tempo, but if you just played 8th notes instead of 16th notes there, when you need to play super blazing fast, the song would really push, but everything's just...
I completely agree on that.
I like a lot of contrast in things.
And I think that's so important. It kind of speaks to our point the other day about the tom mixing, is that it's like, dude, I want my toms to all sound different. Like, obviously, probably I want the same brand of toms, the same model.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't want them all tuned the same frequency range. Like, I want to hear that, that was clearly the smallest tom. Yes. That was clearly the biggest one.
I also feel that if the toms are tuned far enough apart, you can keep them in kind of more narrow, and then you can spread them out wide for a cool effect.
Yeah.
Whereas if your toms are tuned almost the same, you have to spread them out
just so there's different.
Yeah, and you can't really do anything creative. You're kind of handcuffed at that point.
Dude, a great plugin that I love actually on toms. I won't use it as my soul. I'll do like 2 tom buses on sometimes where I'll call my raw tom bus where it's just like some compression and EQ, and then I'll have my CLA tom bus because I'll pull up CLA drums and the tom presets on there. I don't know what the EQ curves are on that thing, but they all of a sudden just give you that like modern tom sound where it's scoop the mids and it's like super tight sounding, but then I'll blend that in with like what I call my natural raw toms, and it gives you a little bit of that low end punch and that top sparkly spank, if you will. But then you mix in kind of like the more mid range from your raw drums to get this nice sound.
I've been doing a thing recently where I duplicate my drum bus like 4 or 5 times, and I'll have a slightly different compressor or different compressor settings on, so then I don't have to automate the plugin itself. I can just push a fader up and pull it back.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
4 or 5 drum buses.
Every time we cut, it should just be apparent, not because of the crossfade and audio and video, but we should just get real excited about the next.
Yeah, we're just like, did they just do a bunch of lines? Like, what happened? Like, we need that pick me up.
Real
That 5x5.
5x5 parallel drum buses. Yeah. So back to that. I have like a gentle compression one, a more aggressive one. Maybe an even more aggressive one, and then just like just an obliterated one.
Just obliterated nonsense. Ooh, do you do any distortion on your drums? Like, and I don't mean as an effect, not like a clearly that's audible distortion, but just as a way to kind of get a little bit of lift in it. Like, so like I'll add a little bit of not even saturation or distortion like through like Fab Filter Saturn or like a bit crusher, and I'll do like a slight like 10% because it just adds a little bit of oomph.
Yeah, a lot of that will come from my multiverse of drum buses. One of them is definitely a more aggressive one that is kind of like overdriven on the way in anyway, and
it's slamming.
Yeah, so it's like slightly distorted just from what the compressor's doing.
Okay,
be
I
that
gotcha.
whatever compressor. I mean, sometimes I'll put some sort of saturation on there.
I love the soft tube FET compressor. That thing you can get to distort, and it sounds crazy.
Yeah, I don't really.
Soft tube's got some really good stuff. I don't have like a bunch of other things, but the plugins that I do have, I love.
I don't have like one set distorted drum sound where I can just be like, I use this. It really varies. So I don't have like here's my distorted drum chain, because it depends. Like metal distorted drums are different than like blues rock distorted drums.
Oh yeah,
so
yeah, completely.
there's some sense of overdrive into a compressor that I'm slamming the input of, and then I'll have to adjust the threshold and ratio accordingly. Like, so it'll be a more aggressive and compressed drum sound, but it won't be like a set threshold.
Yeah.
Because I like driving certain compressors' inputs because you just get cool sounds from them.
Yeah, totally. How about so we talked about the toms and the drum buses. Now, how about what are you doing with your overheads in your rooms? How much are you doing separately, and how much are you kind of blending those two together?
If I'm running a stereo pair of overheads, more than likely they're going to a stereo bus. And then I'll usually run all of my room mics to a room mic bus.
Yeah.
And then I will sometimes route those two buses together to a bus that I'll call like frisbees or something.
Frisbees.
Or plates or something dumb.
Do you do a lot of weird names in your naming schemes?
Yeah. If it's going to somebody else, no, I try to be as like consistent as possible, but I like to make myself laugh throughout it.
I do it with colors. I try to keep the same names just because I do have a lot of like templates that I like to use these days.
Yeah, I mean, I'll call every bus frisbees or it's one of three names.
But for me, if I get bored of like looking at a session, I can't do the name thing because of my templates. But I'll change colors. I'll do wacky colors. Sometimes I'll be like, you know what? I'm trying to fry my retinas. Let me do neon colors today.
My drums are usually dark red in color. Like I always have my drums red, just because my one drum set's red. So I'm like, yes, drums. And then my drum auxes will be a slightly brighter red, and then I will have
my auxes and groups are always a slight variation of color.
Of whatever that initial group color is. Unless it's
this is the most important part of the drums, by the way, is what color
unless
I'm
doing drum samples, and then I will do sepia, because samples and sepia start with the same letter. And you will notice a lot of that. Like my bass is always blue, because then I just have to remember B.
Is guitar green?
Yep.
Are vocals violet?
Yeah.
Why are drums not? Is there a color that starts with D? There's got to be.
Durham blue. No, my drums are red because my drums are red.
I know, I get that, but you should stick with the scheme.
My keys are yellow. No reason for that. Those usually.
Yeah. My vocals are always like yellow or orange. I find. I don't know why.
Nope, my vocals are always a pink or a purple.
What kind of processing do you do in your rooms? Actually, I want to know what kind of EQing you do on your rooms.
Again, it really depends.
God, you are.
I'm sorry that I'm taking a not hard and fast approach to.
What in what context? Okay, let me frame this. In what context are you looking for? In what context would you do some heavy cutting from your rooms, like pulling, like high passing and low passing, and really getting just like a mid?
If the cymbals are marketed to cut through the mix. If the cymbals are really abrasive, usually I'm putting a de-esser on my drum room bus kind of first.
Okay.
Usually there's one sort of ringing frequency cymbal overtone range in there that I just like. I don't want gone, but it needs to be controlled.
What are you looking for mostly in your rooms? Are you looking for a good balance of cymbal and shells, or are you looking for one more so over the other?
That will depend on the density of the song.
Okay.
If it's a more open arrangement, probably more of a balance. Either way, I'm looking for depth and image.
Okay.
And a lot of I like a really aggressive snare image in the room sound. Like if I can't get it from my top mic, I try to get snare aggression. Or if I can't get the aggressive sound just from the snare top mic, I want it from the rooms. So I will usually add I don't know, somewhere between like 5 and 900 hertz. I find there's a good bark in the snare drum in your rooms, or in the room tracks when I process them, when I place them how I like.
Now, how does all this tie together with your overheads? Where are your overheads sitting in conjunction to your rooms? Are they sitting kind of on top of the rooms in terms of like your overheads are a little louder because you're trying to get that direct, I don't want to say direct cymbal sound, but a little more of that?
The drum sound needs to be more up front. My overheads are sitting above my rooms.
Okay.
But if the drums need to be pulled back and the drums are a little bit more of a secondary part of the song for like singer-songwriter-y stuff, or like if it's
the cymbals are kind of creating more of an atmosphere rather than part of the beat and the drive of the song. You're kind of letting them push back a little bit more just to create that atmosphere. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't really like that super aggressive, limited, hella smashed overhead sound. I like really obliterated rooms, but that just adds some explosion in a drum fill or whatever, and those mics aren't always on. They're kind of in and out throughout the song in key parts, and it'll be either just bypassing a compressor in a part or duplicating the room track and figuring out what needs to go where.
I gotcha.
But just finding a balance that serves the song well, and that's why I said it's so genre, and it just depends. It really just depends.
We are giving you the real answers, not the catchy answers.
Yeah, I refuse really to be that. We're just like, here's your 5 problems with room tracks. I'm like, well, there's so many.
Are you pulling subs out of the room?
Sometimes. I feel that sometimes you can get a really cool kick sound from your rooms, though. So usually nothing below 50 or 60. It really just, again.
Yeah, I find I don't have a lot of sub. When I say sub, I mean like 80 and below.
Yeah, I mean,
like I'll have like a kiss between like 80 and 100 depending on like the tonality coming out of that frequency range, because it depends on the kick. If it's a very thuddy kick, I might scoop that out even more. But if it's more of a clicky high end kick, then I might leave that in there just to add some body back in.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like in rooms, all of the mid range that I take out in the close shells is getting re-emphasized with the rooms, and I feel like that adds a really complementary depth to the song.
Yeah.
So
what do you do for overall? So I kind of tie everything together. I'll send all that stuff to then my drum bus. And then
it goes there's all these sub buses that then eventually end up getting routed to a.
Do you do any EQing on your final drum bus?
Well, I try not to, but if I have to, I'm not handcuffed to the idea that it's wrong.
Yeah, I will generally, when I find that I am pulling up an EQ on that bus, it's just to kind of add a little bit of shimmer back into the whole thing. But I would never try to boost low end in the drum bus, because I feel like I'd get some messed up stuff. It's more so just like, man, I just want to lift the veil a little bit. I want to bring everything a little more forward, or push it back if I need to.
It's usually probably a pool tech, and I probably have the low end bypassed altogether.
Yeah,
And it's
just not even
literally just
touching
like subtle moves, like maybe just the overall drums need to be brighter in this part, but instead of messing with all the automation I've done for all my
just
other groups, it's
automate an
just
EQ
like
on.
here's a dB and a half of 16K,
Yeah.
and now it's gone.
What kind of what compressor you use on your drum bus? Do you use a compressor on your drum bus?
Like the overall,
The overall drum bus that
like,
everything's being
not
fed to it.
not my parallel compression buses, just
Not your
the
parallel
overall drum.
compression.
Not really. I feel like there's so much different types of compression going in and out on my mixes sometimes that it would just be
So you're really just using your drum bus as just a group fader to kind of control the overall.
pretty much, yeah.
Okay, I do a good bit of, not a good bit, I do a little bit of processing. I'll definitely probably run through a little more saturation on the drum bus, and just like a kiss. Whereas on the shells, I might add like a good amount to really get some
Right.
tone. Whereas I find I'll do I'll try to find the happy balance between saturation and compression to
Yeah.
really then glue all the drums together. Because if I just add like a little bit of, I love the black box.
Yeah. I mean,
To-
if I do compress, it's light.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, no.
1.5 to 1 or
I
something.
will find, so coming from the heavier side of the genres, like I'll definitely do the parallel. I'll have my parallel drum bus. I'll have my parallel comp bus that I've got going on for just the shells.
Yeah.
But then that bus and then everything else, the dry signal will all go to my main drum bus, and then I'll do another round of, I'll probably G comp style,
Right.
where I'll do a slow attack, fast release on the bus. And I find these days I'm kind of hitting that pretty hard, about like 8 dB, but then dialing the mix knob down to maybe like 25%.
Gotcha.
Because then I'm getting that glue, but then also a little more aggression out of it. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of then automate that mix knob here and there throughout the song. If I'm not looking for an aggressive drum sound, I'll probably just do a very light, like 1 to 2 dB compression, and then I'll get a little more of my glue through the saturation.
Yeah.
And the saturation is not even like distortion. It's really just everything's now being fed the
Additive
same
harmonic.
Yeah, it's there's all this harmonic content now is being filled in the back that's just going to kind of glue the sound together.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do that. Sometimes I will do a separate parallel like kick snare bus.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll do a kick snare bass bus if the song is groovy or appropriate. But those aren't really all the time things. Yeah, the main thing is just like routing each input to a mono or stereo bus depending on what the instrument is. So kick mono, snare mono, toms kick mono, snare mono, toms stereo, overheads stereo, rooms stereo.
Mhm.
And then the kick, snare, and toms are going to some parallel drum buses with some different kind of weird compression. And then the overhead and rooms are going to a overall metals bus. And those are kind of my two blends. Really, if I need a super crushed drum sound, I won't put it out to another bus because it's not going to be there the whole time. I'll just duplicate that track and cut it out.
Where you don't want it and then leave it in there when you do want it.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about the thing that I hate the most about figuring out with the drums?
Sure. Is it effect buses?
Snare verb. Or just drum reverb in general.
Yeah, effects.
Do you I got a question for you. Do you always use a reverb on the drums, or sometimes do you just let the room kind of, if you've got a good enough room sound, you kind of let that be, or do you find you always want a little bit of that, just that artificial reverb?
I'm a sucker for just a snare going to a plate verb.
Okay.
That's just the sound I like.
Do you have a particular plate that you like gold plate or one of the silver plates?
I like I have the UAD pure plate, I think it's called. I'll use that sometimes for snare. Believe it or not, it was in the original Quarantine Arturia, the keyboard.
Yeah.
And they gave away a plate reverb of theirs for free.
I think I remember seeing that.
It's awesome. I really like it because you can overdrive into it, and that's a sound that I really like. So I don't have to do a separate like plug-in to clip it on the way in. I can overdrive on the
Right
way
in
in.
there.
Yeah.
Do you
It sounds really good. Sometimes Little Plates by Sound Toys is cool, but that one can get out of hand fast. I like that more. I like Little Plate for a reverb when it's meant to be like, there's a reverb here.
It's not a gluing tool.
Yeah.
It's a, hey, I want you to know. It's an effect.
Yeah.
It's an effect, not
in the purest sense of the word.
How about, do you use a little bit of pre-delay on there? Let the snare hit first and then get the reverb? Or
yeah,
you
that
like
kind of
just all
adds
at one
some of the
time?
dimension. Sometimes I almost like, if you think about it, like front to back, it'll be hit, room, and then the tail of the reverb will start. So I try to time that in with the tail of the room decay, and it just gets a little bit more length.
Cool. And it also kind of just really ties the room together.
Yeah, sometimes.
So I feel like if you can get your reverb that you choose to really gel well with your room, it does some really cool stuff. Because then it almost creates this whole other sound that it's a blend of your room and a reverb. It's like nobody else has that sound.
Yeah, and sometimes it's about, if you just need a bigger room sound, it's about recording your rooms and sending those to a reverb.
Yeah.
There are some mix engineers who don't send close mics to reverb. I don't know. I always feel that you can get a cool puff of the snare from the reverb, but it's meant to be back in the mix. Like I'm never going to pull up a plate reverb and try to get more body from my snare from it.
Yeah,
It'll just be about adding just a texture to it.
I gotcha.
Sometimes I will also add in another room reverb just for different flavor.
Yeah, for different sections.
Yeah.
Totally.
Where it'll make me, it'll make the listener kind of miss the old drum sound a little bit. Not that it's a bad, it's not the new Coke of of drum reverbs.
Yeah, I'll honestly like for snare and stuff like that, I'll do like a smaller if there's a big dynamic jump and like in the chorus, and say it's a busier verse with the snare, maybe lots of ghost notes, I'll do like a smaller reverb. But then if it's just a more open, big like snare on the 2 and the 4 in the chorus, then I'll send it to like a really huge reverb that just pow. To really emphasize that. I think automations and different reverbs are cool.
Makes the drums and the song sound like they're now in a bigger place.
Yeah.
And they're not. They were just recorded in your basement room. Like it's hard to get snare effects right. Something that I've been doing now is I will automate the snare verb level down when the vocals are in. Yeah. Because there's going to be a lot of vocal effects going on in my mixes, so more reverb plus more reverb.
Yeah, I would say generally there's less time-based stuff going on with the drums than there is any other instrument. Generally.
Yeah, I mean you can get clever and you can throw some delays and stuff in there.
Yeah, like I've sometimes do like a quick slapback delay on the
after
snare.
your reverb. That's fun.
Yeah,
or before. It's
It all depends, So I'll do that just to kind of add almost like not like a double effect, but just it kind of widens. All of a sudden, you've got your mono snare, but then you've got like maybe a stereo slapback, and it's got this really trippy like pow pow sound.
What's fun to do is a mono snare reverb, but then put a stereo delay in line after it, because then your snare really goes from mono to left to right really quickly.
That's really cool.
It's fun. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does.
Do you ever do any flanging, phasing on the drums?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a big... I think I said it in the overhead episode. Like, sometimes I'll get it where it's like, the drums sound as good as they're going to sound, but they don't have the movement that I want. And it could be from the performance or just what the song calls, so I'll add in usually a parallel effect of usually my overheads that are getting flanged, or trash mics, which we didn't really talk about. I usually throw up some random.
For example, we should share a picture of it on the Patreon page or wherever.
My telephone.
The telephone, but also the hose, the fleshlight hose looking thing with the SM57 shoved in it.
Yeah, I have a garden hose that I put all these like PVC pieces together so it would fit a microphone in, and I was at Lowe's like asking the guy to try to like, because I figured out the dimensions on the website. I was like, I need this piece to this piece to this piece. He's like, that's not up to code and not going to hold water pressure. And I was like, it's not. I'm attaching it to a garden hose so I could put a microphone in it so my drums will sound funny.
And he's like,
and he was just like,
what?
but you're putting it to a hose. I was like, no water's going through this. Come on, Jerry. Come on. Yeah, just doing some weird stuff.
You ever do a crotch mic?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I like a crotch mic sometimes.
It's a good, put it over the kick drum in between the rack toms and just point it at the drummer's junk.
Yep. Yeah, and you just get this very boomy, explosive, punchy, crazy, noisy sound.
I like those in Omni. I just don't. The
like
only mics that I have that go Omni are a little bit too valuable for me to just be putting in the middle of a drum kit.
Yeah,
so
I understand.
I want to pick up a cheaper Omni mic.
I like so if you've got if you're in like your house and recording something like that, I like taking room mics into other rooms. It doesn't have to.
Mic,
the hallway mic. It could be. Again, it's like it's gonna be far enough away that it's gonna have just a crazy sound to it, and you can do a lot of weird stuff.
Gonna compress it aggressively anyway, so
and it'll give you some really weird sounds that way. I think that's a lot of fun.
I just realized I bought those Behringer reference mics, so I have an Omni mic that I got. They were like $30. I meant to measure my room, and then they came, and then I had to go to work, and I never did it.
And just
so drum effects are tough. They can definitely make or break the song.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll add a kiss of like room reverb to the toms if I need There are some things that reverbs in the box do that your rooms don't.
Mm-hmm.
And neither one of them is better or worse. It's really just context dependent. Because you can get a really aggressive like attack out of a short reverb on your toms.
Yeah.
Think, your Metallica's or Hysteria by Muse was referenced by me in a previous podcast. So, yeah, I'm sure we missed a lot of stuff in drum effects. I'll use halls or other stuff on snares. Spring reverbs are really fun to send a kick to.
Ooh, I am not a huge fan of kick on reverb, but reverb on kick. But I will do it sometimes, especially if I'm trying to, because I feel like a lot of times the kick drum can feel a little separate from a mix, and just by adding a little kiss or reverb can sometimes tie it, really glue it back in.
There's if it's a haunting sounding song that just kind of creeps, sending the kick to a reverb can be really, really cool.
Yeah.
There's a song by, I think he's Irish.
Is it Creep by TLC?
Yep. Creep by Radiohead's very creepy song. No, there's an Irish artist named Hosier.
I know.
He has a song called Arsonist Lullaby, and it's just a very four on the floor kick sound with the occasional snare flam, but the kick's going to a cavernous sounding reverb.
Oh, that's
because it's supposed to be a very haunting building song. Not one of my playlist picks, but I'll add it because I think the drum sounds.
No, I think that's great. I feel like you can get a lot more creative with minimalist drum arrangements.
Yes,
because then there's more room for the effects. Whereas if you've got your standard kind of
busy,
it's
hard.
It can be really hard because it's then you're almost taking away from the drum performance. Whereas something like that, the other thing I love, it doesn't. There's no really crazy effect on it, but I think I might have mentioned it. I don't know, but the latest Jack White song, "Love Is Selfish."
Yeah, I listened to that. Finally,
it's great. I mean, when it brings in just the snare and the ride, I mean, the beautiful sounds. But it's such a minimalistic percussion arrangement that everything, when it does come in, you're just like, wow, that sounds really great. And I think that's also a big key to things, that if you are going to go for a minimalist arrangement, you got to be really sure to get your tones right, because
you can't hide it.
You can't hide it. Whereas if you've got a busy drum mix, it's like, hopefully as long as the playing is tight, you can kind of make up for crappy tones and you can, finagle your way. But if you've got something that's like
one kick, one snare mic, one overhead for your ride, 2 guitars and vocals.
Yeah, I mean, everything's got to be real good.
Yeah, there's certain things where I've gotten, we've all gotten mixes from people where you're just like, I'm going to have to figure out how to hide this this performance of whatever it may be the best I can. Whereas if you have a really dense mix and you sneak in a kick sample, the client's probably not going to know. But if you have one kick drum from your folk thing, they know what it sounds like because there's one thing.
Yeah. And honestly, I think just talk to them about stuff. I mean, most clients don't really care. They just want their stuff to sound good. I feel like I'd say 95% of my clients have literally told me, like, do whatever, man. Just make it sound good. Because it's like, that's what you're paying for. It's like, if they wanted a recording of, like, how real they are, they would pay to have one of their shows recorded. But, like, they want, when they're coming to the studio, most people are cool. I mean, as long as you don't replace them with somebody else playing it, you know, that at that point.
Never done that.
At that point, it's kind of like, you might want to talk to whoever the band leader is. Just be like, hey, dude, look, you got to understand that, you know,
little Timmy on bass.
Little Timmy on bass, you know. Yeah, it's not working out. But I think most times, like, most people understand, like, yeah, there's sample replacement. There's things that sometimes have to be done. If you want a good product, you know, if you want it to be the best that it can be. I mean, we touched upon that before about drum samples too, that sometimes it's just like, it doesn't matter what microphones you have or so and so. If you don't have the right drum, but you're going for a particular drum sample, a drum sound, then it's like, hey, it doesn't matter what kind of processing you do, you're not going to get there, so you should just sample it.
Yeah, that is another talking point that I forgot about, and we're wrapping around to. I think it's better to just have very few samples that you know will work than having all of the drum samples for everything.
Yeah, I agree. I have mine set up in folders of genre.
Yeah.
Of, hey, these are my progressive metal sounding snares. These are my snare go-tos for more Americana acoustic music. And then I'll probably have like 4 or 5.
Yeah, I was listening, it was the same podcast with Joe Barisi, who's one of my favorite engineers, and he was just like, I've used the same kick sample for 15 years now when I have to. And he goes, because I'm never really completely replacing a kick.
No, I never replace anything anymore unless
he's like, I'm augmenting, so I know what this sample is going to do, and I'm pretty sure it's just like a D112 style, like just good rock kick sound.
Yeah.
That it could be a sample, or it could just be that's a D112 in front of a kick drum sound. Yeah, instead of, you know, getting all of these different sample packs, I think it's better to have a smaller toolkit that you've mastered that you know will just work.
I think I do like having a big collection, because I think every once in a while I'll go through and maybe I'll pick some new ones that I'll be like, these are the ones I'm going to use.
Yeah, I'm not.
It does get kind of, because you do get to a point where it's kind of like you are going to start hearing like, oh man, I do the same thing every time.
Right.
So having a collection I don't think is bad, but when you go to sit down to mix, I completely agree. That's like, no, when you go down to mix, you need to only be picking from like, you know, 4.
Yeah, I mean,
like, hey, these are the ones that I know are going to work, and then depending on the mix, this one. But don't go through your entire library every time you sit down to mix.
Yeah, just have an idea. But you also work on stuff where the drum sample is maybe a little bit more prevalent in the mix.
Yeah.
Where I'm only ever adding a sample if something is lacking.
I got you.
And I don't...
Yeah.
It's not that I have to hide it, but it's not... It's making up the final 10% of the kick sound, where it's not a 50-50 split. Where it's... So I only have 3 or 4 kick samples to pick from.
Yeah,
where
I completely, then 100%, yeah. But if you're in the, my point I will revise mine to say, if you are in the genre where it's going to be, you're getting some tone from that, it's not just a kiss, it's like, hey, you're kind of part of that music sound is real drums and sample drums that you're just not going to get no matter how good of a recording you get. You're going to, you know, that sound is having samples. You do want to have a variation, because you don't want to have that same snare sound every time.
What, metalcore from 2005 to 2015
was like Slate Kick 10
or
whatever.
all Slate Kick 10, which is a great sounding sample.
Yeah, but it's like you can hear that on every record. You're like, that's the same kick drum sound. It gets kind of boring.
So even, you know, record your own kick sample.
That's my favorite thing to do.
Just tell the drummer, like, hey, there's a chance that samples are going to need to be happened. So before we get to performing, while the heads are fresh, let's sample your drum kit. So if I have to add anything, I'm just adding.
I love doing drums. That, and it also then builds your sample collection.
It does.
Got all these made. I have a sample of this drummer's snare that I just like the way he hit it, the way he played. I loved it. I was like, it's this like really, like, right in the middle of between dark and light. It's like super neutral, just crack. That's just so nice that it's such a great sample. It works great on any kind of snare that I might need. It's like, oh man, this snare's got a lot of high end. I need to that body. There's that sample. Man, the snare's really dark, but I'm kind of liking it. I just want to lift it a little bit. There's that sample. And, you know, you can't buy it. It's mine.
Yeah. mono snare verbs can be useful sometimes in denser mixes.
Oh yeah, I love a mono snare reverb. It just tucks right back in there, like right behind the snare, right behind the vocal, and it's just out of the way.
Need a little bit of length that's not noticeable for the snare in the track. That's cool. I've spent way too much time like trying to just shoehorn in a stereo snare verb into mixes, and it's just not working.
Yeah.
And then there's some times where I'm like, no, the mono snare verb's the way to go, and I flip it to a stereo real quick, and I'm like, there, it's back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think mono in a denser mix where you're trying to save room, you're trying to save space in your stereo image, but you still want to add that color and depth that you get. Yeah, mono's
the way to go. Cool. I think that I'm sure we missed a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, this isn't, This has been drums and stuff like that. We've talked a good bit about it. I think people have a general idea about how to do some stuff. Just just talking about it, fleshing it out, talking about ideas.
Figure it out.
And it's not like we can't do another one at some point and get more specific. If the listeners are like, well, what about this and this and this? Well, then we'll come back and do another one. So should we get on to the playlist for the week?
Yeah. I don't remember who went first last time. I think you went first.
Yeah, so you go.
I will go first. This week for playlists, I suggested we throw out songs that it's assumed that we like the mixes of the references we'd said before. So my playlist is more drum sounds that needed some processing or effect help to try to get there.
I dig it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, for me, it was a little bit tougher. I was like, well, I don't really know. There's not really a lot of effects on here. So I did kind of just go with like overall drum sounds that I think just really work well together. Like the kick, the snare, all of the overheads. It's just a good drum sound. Not that I don't think the other songs were, but I think those other songs that I picked were definitely ones where it was like, I really like this particular element. Whereas in these mixes, I just think each one of these drum kits suits the song very well.
That's fair. With my previous picks, I intentionally went into it where it was an overall drum sound that I like, but this particular element stands out in the context. So
yeah, because I know I picked some songs where I really like the snare and I absolutely abysmally hate the kick. That's some of those mixes.
No, I picked drum sounds that I like pretty much across the board.
Okay.
Thinking of the drum set as a whole, but just singling out one particular, because it was like snare drums where like, I like so much of my snare sound comes from the overheads in the rooms that even if I like the snare sound, it should be assumed that I liked the rooms as well.
It's I should have said that earlier. I love the Saint Anger snare, but I hate the rest of the drum kit. So.
That's fair. All right. It was recorded in a stairwell. Ooh. There were
dead bodies. No?
Slightly distant mics. But it was an echo in the mix for Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks.
Nice.
Andy Johns, the engineer, said there were 2 Beyer M160s on the drum kit that he sent to some Italian-made echo unit. So the slap that you hear in that song is a delay unit and not microphones placed about this mansion, like the YouTube experts like to say. So my pick, Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks. Had to throw some Zeppelin in
I
the
know.
drum
I
sounds.
almost picked another. I almost picked a Zeppelin song.
And that sound was so good that I wrote that Carnival even gave a nod to it in the bridge of Simple Boy off of Sound Awake.
Oh, nice.
And I'm disgusted with myself. I wrote Simple Man, which is one of the worst songs.
I love that song. So Simple Man by Leonard Skinner is not in your list?
I mixed that song 5 times in a Gettysburg Rocks weekend. That's a 3-day festival. You do the math. I'm over it.
You're over it. One of my favorite drum sounds, I wish we could hear the whole record, but I don't think there is a release of the entire version. But one of mine is Heart Shaped Box by Nirvana, the Albini mix. Not the one that was originally released.
Not the one you know.
Not the one you know. Well, you might know it. It's on the deluxe. They released it on the deluxe version finally. They do Heart Shaped Box, and I think All Apologies. They released the original Albini mixes, where the guitar that comes in during Heart Shaped Box, when the distorted guitar is the loudest thing you've ever heard. It's just like, oh my God. You're like, you go, okay, I get why the record label was like, what the hell, we can't release this. But as an artist, I love it because it suits Nirvana so well, but this is about the drums. I think...
Have you listened to the Pearl Jam 10 remixes?
No. Are they good or bad?
It's different.
When were these done?
2012?
So these are like current remixes of it. Wasn't that album done live? Wasn't that kind of like they were all together in the room?
I don't know enough.
It always sounds like it was like a kind of a live album. Obviously they were overdubs, but
that album was like so vocal reverb and guitar focused.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on Spotify for the Pearl Jam one. You can go on iTunes, go to Pearl Jam 10, and you scroll to the bottom of your iTunes when you're at like the song list on the albums, and it'll say other versions, and it's a white one.
Okay.
And
I'll have to check
click
that out.
on that. I don't think it's better or worse, but it's different in a pleasing way.
That's awesome. I think the Albini mix of the In Utero stuff is superior. I think it suits the artist. I think the drums aren't... I can't tell, listening to it, I haven't done enough of dissection to tell how different the drums themselves exactly are. I think they are a little different. They are a little roomier. I think they dialed back on that. They used less of the room mics in the commercial mix, but Albini's mix, you hear it's like, because I think they recorded that album like in a house, if I remember correctly. They went to like a cabin or they went to some house.
Was
it a studio?
It was a studio in Montana or North or South Dakota. One of the Dakotas or Montanas or something.
But it's such a big, boomy, roomy sound. It's beautiful. That snare just goes. And I love it. I think it's a great...
Yeah, I read something that there was like... They had to book the session, but they had to book it under a fake band name. So none of the like staff of the studio would leak that Nirvana was coming to the studio.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Steve Albini's a total fucking nut job, but I think
you love him.
But I love him though.
Not just you, everyone. Everyone
yeah,
loves
no,
him.
I do though. I think I would never hang out with the man, but I like his mixes.
I feel like he would. I feel like as long as we stuck to audio, he would be. I don't know. He would be an interesting hang. I'm pretty neutral.
Well, Steve, if you want to come on the show,
yeah,
I would love to talk with you. We won't talk about the economy or fiscal responsibility.
I don't mean it as an attack. He's a very direct man.
Yeah, I like that he believes what he believes.
Yeah,
even if I disagree with him, but he's a great engineer.
Nothing but respect. In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins.
That had to be on here. I'm really happy you did it.
Yeah, I had to. It is a room sound, but if they would have not done, I think
the 80s to it,
they would have not accidentally patched it through the talkback compressor on the SSL console, it wouldn't have happened. So, voila. It would have been cool with just rooms, but
that's
processing
a great drum sound. Yeah.
Turned it from pretty cool to the most legendary drum sound of all time.
Yeah, I'd say everybody knows that Phil. Yeah, everybody knows it.
So you can't
go wrong with that one. Yeah. It had to be on the list. I'm gonna go with a really modern one. The Problem with Other Minds by Animals as Leaders. They are a really interesting band because when they first started, I hated their mixes on their first few albums. They were super stiff. The band itself is like so technical that it's like it needs some room to breathe.
Yeah.
And I feel like they finally, with their last record and now this one, have really dialed in an awesome sound where they are getting... I feel like they were never a gent band, but then they were mixed like a gent band.
Yeah.
And they're their own thing. So this current drum sound is really nice. There's a lot of body to the drums. It's still punchy because it still is metal. But this song doesn't have a lot of distorted guitar in it, so you really can hear a nice breathing of the drums. And so I think it is really different for that genre of music, that in this technical metal style, it's not just like over-the-top drums. It's almost like... I don't know. I would compare it to almost just like a punchier version of like how you'd mix jazz drums, There's a good amount of cymbals. The snare isn't overpowering.
Yeah.
The kick sits pretty low.
It's mixed like some fusion.
Yeah, fusion stuff.
Which is cool because it's jazz with some edge to it. Which
I love it. I think it's a really great mix.
They're a phenomenal band.
Yeah. And he'll be happy we mentioned that one.
Yeah, shout out to our boy Matt Garska. He thought I was going to say Andy. Love you, buddy. Some of my favorite hybrid acoustic and electric drums kind of mashed together will round out the last couple songs on my list. I'm going to go with The Life of Brian, parenthesis, apparently you haven't seen, end parenthesis, off of Pussifer's Money Shot album. It's just a cool blend of, there's acoustic elements to the drum kit, there's electronic pads, there's a programmed hi-hat that's going in and out of the song. There is a tambourine tucked into the snare hit. Mm-hmm. And I never really paid so much attention where I was trying to like decipher every element.
What all is going on?
What is this chimey click? And I paid attention to when the snare hits, and then there's just a tambourine with it too. And it's a short tambourine.
I love the mixing of electronic drums with real drums.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. I've been diving into that for some of the Marzi stuff, which is gonna be cool. But I think it's really cool having like, you know, a good backbone that's the acoustic drums, and then blending in little elements of electronic stuff.
Yeah, where it's the perfect balance of there's elements of both, but neither is they're
not overpowering.
Yeah.
They're blending together to create their own drum sound.
Certain things in modern productions that you'll hear where the electronic element isn't the effect of the drums. You can tell it's just clearly there because the drummer can't play it. Mm-hmm. So they just like, well, if we program it, you can just use it in tracks live. And that's, you know, I'm not trying to knock anything, but you can tell where they're doing it to augment the ability of the performer, where this is just the performer adding another layer of texture to the mix. Yeah. And the rest of my picks will kind of be that as well.
That actually ties in with my pick right here. Lazarus by David Bowie off his last album. There's a lot of cool drum sounds on that one. I was going to pick one that I was like, I think that's entirely electronic. This one I think this one is actually a blend of acoustic drums that then might have been then dubbed over in some parts with electronic drums. But one, it's got a sick groove. It's this kind of fast-paced, shuffly kind of thing. But it's just a really nice sound. A lot of the tones on that record entirely come from whatever the drum sound is. Like the first few songs on it, there's not a lot of other instrumentation. It's very, you know, like a bass line, minimalist bass line, but then the drums. And so I think that's a really good example of drum sounds can really shape the mood of the song versus where I think a lot of times the drums are really they're just percussion to add a beat, whereas this really, it's almost like the drums have a melodic texture to them.
Yeah, I like that in drums. My fourth pick will be Bedhead off of Manchester Orchestra's Million Masks of God album, the one that just came out. Again, it's a good blend of, you can tell they were natural drums that have been played through just a wide variety of pedals to create some effects, and there's a cool reverse reverb leading into the snare that just kind of adds a nice like chop to the groove, where it's not just like a good like blues pace, but it's like left to right, like really quick.
Yeah.
It's fun. That whole album is actually, there's a lot of textures of just they recorded drums and then they just for like a part. So it's like a 2-bar thing that they just completely affected with pedals and reamping through amps and doing crazy stuff in the box, and they just mixed it into the record to make an atmosphere.
I actually did the other day. We got an electronic drum kit. Andy picked one up. And we didn't have a speaker for it, so we just plugged it into one of my amps. And then I just started messing around with the different settings on the amp, and it was really cool. So I definitely advise if you've got like an acoustic drum kit and then you want to just send a stereo feedback out to an amplifier, or even if you've got an electronic drum kit, you know, running through some crazy shit.
Even an amp sim in your DAW.
Yeah, or that.
Do some stuff, you know, put mics in front of your studio monitors and just run your drum mix through that. And the world's really
is your oyster.
Yeah, that's such an odd phrase, but
yeah, it is really weird. Yeah. All right, so I got another pretty, I don't know if I would call this standard. This is like the early 2000s here. All Bodies by Between the Buried and Me. It's really cool. That song is very long, but there are a couple different, they're not extremely different drum sounds, but because of the dynamics where they, like Between the Buried and Me does, where they've got really heavy parts and then quieter parts. But I also want to reference that this is the original mix, not the remix that just came out.
Okay.
I don't dislike the remix, but the thing about the remix for me is that it does that modern thing where everything, there's these frequencies that are just every instrument has. Whereas what I really like about this drum mix, back the original one, is each drum sounds so different. Like the kick is like super top end heavy.
Right.
It's like super clicky, but then the snare is super mid and low. And then the toms are very like, they're almost like they've got that kind of like those heavy mids, you know, the boosted mids and the toms. So the whole drum kit sounds like this really
contrasted.
Yeah, it's this really contrasting, like, whoa, it's almost, it's a little jarring at first if you're coming from listening to a bunch of modern stuff where you've got almost this kind of scooped thing going on and all the drums. This is like, whoa, this is so different. And I think it was kind of different at that time period too, because that time period, a lot of guys were just using heavy samples and everything. Whereas I don't think there's a lot of sampling going on this. And then I also really love how the cymbals are not, they're not pushed back. They're very forward on this mix. Like, because you can hear everything that's going on. And to tie into our cymbal choice thing, the cymbal choice was great. Also, the cymbal positioning is that I think another thing that you can do as a drummer is if you, even if they're not like two crashes or whatever like that, if you've got alike sounding cymbals, try to space them apart on the kit. It's going again with that tom thing, is that if you got cymbals that react in the frequency range similarly, try to spread them out so that you can, you know, not have them blend together in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, my crash that's on the left side of my kit from the player's perspective is purely just an accent crash. Like, I'm never going to hit that thing. To like ride on it or get a wash out of it. It's purely just to be hit and decay. Because it's weird. Because I like bigger cymbals, but that crash is like an 18, and it's just perfect. So I can just hit it.
Nice accent.
Yeah. But I tend to like darker or washier cymbals. It's just my vibe. And then my last pick. This is a great blend of an affected drum sound going into a natural-ish heavy drum sound would be Red Sky by Thrice.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure at one point, instead of a kick drum at the beginning groove of the song on the album, it's actually like a water bottle from like a depot, you know what I mean? Like the break room water jug.
Yeah, the big water jugs. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I read or heard in a podcast that is the kick sound, and they ran it through some crazy pedals and shit.
That's awesome.
I mean, Visu's one of those, like, the most well-done experimental records for the times, especially because they had just been signed to a major label, and they were shown the, like, you know, we can send you to Howard Benson, and his team of nerds will chop up your drums, and then CLA will mix it, and you'll get a #1 record, and you'll be on the front page of all the magazines, and then you'll break up because it wasn't what you wanted for the band. And they said, screw that, we're going to go do this weird experimental record with the guy who produced like U2 and KT Tunstall. And it's one of the best heavy records ever.
It's awesome. One of my favorites of theirs.
But it's not so far, it's not doing that modern thing that I said where the affected drum sound is just because the drummer couldn't play it. Like when they play it live, he just plays that groove. It's just not played on a water jug.
But it shows you how good of an arrangement it is because it still works.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing too. I think the effect can't make up for a bad arrangement. Yeah. They can only enhance it. My last pick is a pretty just standard drum sound, but I think it's really great on the record. Butt Breathing by Defeater. That's off their, what is that, their second record? And it's one of like the last tracks. So you've gotten like 10 tracks of just heavy, dark, thrashing, poppy drums. And then you go into this acoustic ballad.
Yeah, there's like the acoustic EP that comes after the album.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's just a really awesome drum sound because it ties in so well with the previous songs, even though it's almost like they've switched genres. Yeah. But it can be used. You could hear that drum sound on like a million different. You could hear how that drum sound would work on a million different things. It's just is a very just smooth sounding warm kit that I love that sound. I think it's just.
And I imagine that was early
celebrate it.
on in his recording career. because that was the album that they did like next to his like washing machine, right?
Pretty sure.
Like,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That was
so
because
he-
that's off the second record.
yeah. So he probably didn't have, you know, the locker that he has now. So it
Yeah.
just goes to show that like if you record your drums correctly, you can do
Amazing things.
so much.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Is that the playlist?
That is the playlist. I will be
Alright.
sure to include all of the other songs that we mentioned.
Yeah.
We
those,
should.
Those links will be in the description for the Apple Music playlist, the Spotify playlist.
Yes, playlist will be linked in the description. As Phoenix just said, you can follow us on Instagram at Reflections Artist Collective. You can
And YouTube.
subscribe to our channel on YouTube, youtube.com/Reflections Artist Collective. That'll be in the link if you're watching this on YouTube.
Subscribe to our Patreon if you see
if you
so fit as to do so.
would care to help out some content creators early on in their adventures, our Patreon, we will gladly accept a reoccurring monthly donation.
We also accept vintage Playboy magazines.
That I would look at it and sell it to fund the company, but you know,
Or we could like put them in the sound panels. And
Maybe.
design the place. I think it'd be kind of cool.
could be.
So maybe we might do some cool stuff for the next episode. Who knows? We're
Yeah.
gonna keep it a secret.
I feel like I already mentioned what it was in an earlier episode.
Well, it's a secret
So
now. It's a secret to me.
Drums are over, as they
We're done. We're never
should
talking about
be.
drums ever again. Ever.
It was a
We are becoming a cooking podcast now.
Yeah, I found a recipe for like a French toast bake with peaches. That would be. I think that sounds good.
Let's go get
So,
some peaches.
Yeah, we should do that instead of home recording.
Well, fare thee well, all of our wonderful listeners.
Yes, this concludes the first part of our home recording series. We will be venturing out of my turf and expertise and onto stuff that I have opinions of but no education on. So it is perfect to post on the internet.
This was episode 6.
Yeah, something like that.
You wanna give the farewell? I introed the show. You wanna extra the show?
Extra the show. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening.
This has been the Backseat Playlist.
Boom. Enjoy your day.